Good evening and welcome to the 2020 Student Association Virtual Candidates Debate. I'm Citrus TV's Gabrielle Caracciolo.
And I'm Chris Heppensteel with the Daily Orange. We're going to start tonight with a message from the Student Association Chair of the Board of Elections and Membership, David Bruin. David?
Hi, everyone. If you don't know me already, Chris just introduced me. My name is David, and I am the Board of Elections and Membership Chair for the Student Association. I just want to start by thanking you for watching and participating in this debate. Right now, with the coronavirus in our midst, things are pretty uncertain, confusing, and anxious, to say the least. But despite classes going online, we're moving forward with this election. Now, it's not ideal and certainly not what I imagined would happen when I stepped into this role, but I have done everything I can to ensure that students can be engaged and informed on this process. Part of my plan has been to ensure that there's a more informed and engaged student body that takes place tonight during the debate. Tonight, you're going to hear from candidates who are running and have been working tirelessly in recent weeks to represent you. But the best way to make certain that they represent you is to vote. All undergraduate students will have the opportunity to vote via MySlice starting this Monday at 12 a.m., starting at midnight. You can go onto MySlice under Student Services, click Vote Now, and choose who you want to represent you for this upcoming academic year. Voting is extremely important. This past year, we have seen the importance of student leadership on our campus. And if we want to define the direction of our student leaders on campus for the next year, the best way to do that is to vote on MySlice starting this upcoming Monday, April 13th. So thank you again for all being here. Now let's get into the debate and hear from the candidates.
Thank you, David. The first portion of tonight's event will focus on the essay Comptroller candidate. Later on, we'll hear from the presidential and vice presidential candidates. Since there is only one candidate for Comptroller, Julio Burgos, this portion of tonight's live stream will function more as a town hall rather than a debate in order to allow the student body to get to know Julio a little bit better.
The SA Comptroller is the head of the SA Financial Board. The board is responsible for making SA's financial decisions, which include allocating the student activity fee to the 300+ registered student organizations on campus. Julio, why don't we start by having you introduce yourself to the audience and tell us why you're qualified to be SA Comptroller.
Well, good evening, everyone. My name is Julio Burgos. I am a junior studying economics with a minor in strategic management. I'm from Miami, Florida. Been in Syracuse. Actually got into Syracuse to the Apostle Foundation, which is a wonderful thing to have and to be a part of at Syracuse University. Question, well, why am I qualified to be the comptroller? Well, I think though that I have not been part of SA over the past 3 years at Syracuse University, I do bring different experiences that are not with SA, but on student campus involvements. I am part of the Forever Orange Zone Alumni Council. I've been the fiscal agent for the Renegade magazine for the past 3 years. I have the opportunity to intern at prestigious firms from the world, such as Ernst & Young and Virtual Cafe Miami, which allowed me to gain the experiences that I would think will help me be a successful comptroller at Syracuse. And another thing is, I feel like sometimes when you do bring a different experiences that is not from SA, you do able to bring in different ideas that I think allows for the board to meet its functions. And one of them is just, I've had experience as fiscal training, as fiscal agent for Renegade Magazine. So I kind of see the things that are not working for fiscal training, fiscal agents, or just orgs on campus. So I think that's a great point of view to have running for this position on campus.
Julio, last night, the SU College Republicans secured nearly $40,000 from the SA Finance Board to potentially bring conservative Speaker Ben Shapiro to campus in the fall. The announcement has sparked a mix of praise and criticism on social media. Today, students received a statement from the Finance Board via email. Do you agree with the Finance Board's decision, and what do you think of their statement?
Well, I 100% agree with the statement that was put out by the Finance Board, and the reasons are the following. First, I think that they acted objectively, meaning they went by the rules, which is the finance code that allow the Finance Board to decide which RSO, registered students organization, is allowed to receive funding. Another thing is a lot of people are not realizing that yes, this was a proposal. They were approved. They met the requirements that were set forward by Stacey Amosa, which is the current comptroller, and the finance code. Therefore, if they met the requirement, they went through the process, they were able to get approved. Now, a lot of something that the public is not realizing is now they do have to go through the process of being vetted by their by DPS as well as their student activities counselor, and which is up in the air now because of the current backlash that it's receiving on campus by Syracuse students.
Julio, you've said you'll work to make the Finance Board more transparent. What would financial transparency entail under your leadership?
For me, it will be having the ability and responsibility of having a more interactive comptroller with the student body, meaning, I've spent 3 years at Syracuse, and my first year, I had no idea who was the comptroller. I had no idea what was the role and how like their decision impacted my college experience, meaning I want to be able to work and connect with the student body from the first time. It could be freshmen, from the first moment they get into campus up until whenever I'm there, even sophomores, juniors, and seniors, and allow them to know how my decisions and just essay in general, their decision can impact their college experience.
And just one question to follow up, Julio. How would you balance transparency with the privacy concerns of student organizations who might not want their exact funding totals public to the student body?
Well, I think it's part of the process. When in this current moment, yesterday, when the finance board decided to announce who got approved and who didn't, it was just a matter of the current situation now. I was able to see who didn't get approved and who did not, which is fine. You're a student body. You're paying for this activities fee, which this is your money. You should be responsible. You should be able to know where your money is going into and where it's not.
Julio, you've said that if elected, you plan to make the funding application process more student friendly. How exactly do you plan on doing that?
Well, I think it's more of a process of being able to at least work one-on-one with physical training. I went through the process myself. I never kind of like have someone just reach out to me or just being able to help me through the process. But I feel that the training should be able to be more hands-on because I feel that physical training and physical agent change over the academic year, meaning now we have seniors leaving. Now we're gonna have freshmen or sophomores who possibly step up as physical agent. They had no idea what's going on. Some people might I could come with the idea that they possibly know about the process, which they don't. So I want to be able to at least be able to have hands-on experience with the new and the current physical agent on campus.
Julio, one of your platforms that you listed is supporting underrepresented students and multicultural organizations to create and maintain inclusive spaces. What steps would you take to pursue this goal?
One of the first steps is actually working one-on-one with these organizations on campus. A lot of these organizations represents marginalized communities on campus who are still paying their student activities fee and who relied on such organizations just like NSPAC, which is the council for Black Greek organization on campus. If they don't have the funding to host their events, how do we expect that those community members are able to have a great experience by the concerts or community events they put on, and not just NPAC, but you also have NALFO as well. Why didn't they have why didn't have the funding to have their events last semester or the previous year? I don't know why, but I feel that that should be I want to be able to work with those leaders on campus and fiscal agent to provide them with the proper training and process to submit their budget and for them to get approved on campus.
Now, as you mentioned at the beginning, you're involved in quite a lot on and off campus. Would you continue with all of those roles if elected to the comptroller position, as the comptroller position is quite a time commitment?
Well, I will be stepping down from the Renegade Magazine EBOR as their fiscal training. Like I said, I want to be transparent. Don't want to favoritize organization over others. I'll still be involved with FOSAC, the Forever Orange Student Alumni Council, which I'm currently involved in. And I'm no longer an RA as I was last year, which is a good thing, which is very time consuming. But this is something that I wanted to do. This is something that I'm passionate about. This is something that I feel that it's important to my experiences at Syracuse University, as well as other students' experiences at Syracuse University, and that's why I decided to run. So I would definitely be giving up some positions, but it's definitely for the good of the student body at Syracuse University.
All right. Over the last few days, the Student Association has asked students to submit their questions for the comptroller. One anonymous student would like to ask Julio, how do you plan to limit the spread of misinformation regarding SA funding and funding opportunities for events?
I think it's more having an active role, especially social media. And I was having this conversation with my friends. They knew that I was going to be at this debate, and one of the things that they were asking me about, like, oh, why did the finance board decide to bring in Ben Shapiro? Why did they approve them? And I came up and I decided, I had to explain to them that this is a process. It's not like I mentioned before. They acted objectively. There's a two-step process to this. And my idea is through social media and through fiscal agent training. I feel that a lot of the fiscal agent training don't even know about this kind of stuff. They didn't have me read like the finance code as a fiscal training agent, and I feel like is well mentioned in there. The process of speakers coming into campus and the process of funding at Syracuse University.
Another student, Michael, asked, in what ways would your administration be similar to the current SA administration, and how would you differ?
Well, I think Stacy and Melissa did an amazing job. I'll definitely tweak some of the things which I mentioned is the fiscal agent training. Like I said, I have experience with that over the past 3 years. We go to a meeting, they list the steps that we need to submit our budgets, but I kind of like never get to hear back from them unless it's if we have to attend our budget hearing meetings or anything that has to do with budgets. I want to be able to have that, like I mentioned before, hands-on approach where I'm able to have office hours and actually try to get students to come into office hours, because I feel that this is one of the reasons why a lot of these budgets are being denied. Yesterday, I was in the finance board meeting, and one of the main reasons that all these budgets were being denied is because you don't have fiscal agents attending the meeting or even requiring space allocation for the following semester or submitting a different year space allocation, which I think, if I'm able to have that one-on-one conversation with those student leaders and fiscal agent on campus, I think would definitely minimize those problems. But like I said, I think Stacy and her team did a wonderful job. But there's always space to improve.
All right, thank you so much, Julio. The next portion of the debate will focus on the candidates for SA President and Vice President. The rules for this portion are as follows. Candidates will each get 90 seconds to respond to questions from the moderators. They will have 1 minute to respond to any follow-ups or respond if they're addressed directly by another candidate. After that, candidates will have 30 seconds to respond to any further clarifications. We'll give the candidates time warnings in the chat feature of the call. We ask candidates, please be respectful of the rules and avoid interrupting or speaking over each other so we can maintain a respectful and productive debate environment, and turn off your microphones when you are not speaking.
Now, let's have the candidates for SA President and Vice President give their opening statements. Each candidate will have 90 seconds to introduce themselves. Let's start with Justine Hastings and Ryan Golden.
Hi, so my name is Justine Hastings. I'm from Brooklyn, New York. I major in English and Textual Studies and Secondary English Education, and I'm a junior. I would say that a lot of the work that I do on this campus involves working with students, but especially students of marginalized identities. So this includes being an RA in the residence halls, working at the LGBT Resource Center, working as the Secretary of Pride Union, being an Inclusive U residential mentor in the past. I'm just always in the field with students, working with students. Let Ryan speak now.
Hi, sorry, I was having some trouble with my mic. So I'm Ryan Golden. I'm a junior from Charlotte, North Carolina. I study religion, poli-sci, and policy studies. And I've spent time as an RA on this campus. I've been an SA for 2 years. I was an assembly representative as well as chair for academic affairs. I was a member of the University Senate as well as a co-chair for the University Senate's Student Life Committee. And as of right now, I'm a member of the University Conduct Board. And I'm running for vice president just because I think that we need to have a strong and more activist student association. When I ran last year, that was the same thing that I believed then, and I still believe it now. And I think that Justine and I have a great idea for how to do that.
Thank you, Justine and Ryan. Next up, Morgan Eaton and David Williams.
Hi, everyone. Thank you so much for tuning into the debate tonight. Thank you so much to CitrusTV, Daily Orange, and Student Association for having us. David and I are both really impressed by the ingenuity and the continued work to make this debate still happen. So my name is Morgan Eaton. I'm a sophomore. I'm a citizenship, civic engagement, and policy studies major. On campus, I'm involved with Student Association Assembly. I'm on the Community Relations Committee. I work out in the community as an Onondaga County Health Department intern, where I work with new Americans, focusing on mental health. Back home, I'm a part of my town's Development Review Board, and I also work for the state of Vermont on opioid-related issues. I'll let David speak in a moment, but we just both want to introduce our platforms to the student body because that's really important. We want to introduce our health and wellness platform, student life, transparency, and voters' choice platforms. We sort of came about this because our principle is driven by you, and we really want to emphasize conversations with the student body. So it's been great to speak to organizations and individuals, hearing all of your thoughts and concerns. And I'd like to pass it over to David to introduce himself.
Hi, everyone. Again, I am David Williams. My pronouns are he, him, his. I'm currently a sophomore in the Maxwell School majoring in policy studies. Everything I do, like many others on campus, is work with students. That is what I'm about. I am also about recognizing every student's individual impact. Some things I'm involved in on campus include NAACP, Orange Seeds, the Jump Nation Mentorship Program. I am also a part of the Men of Color Initiative, as well as the Once Lake Leadership Program. And as well as Julio Burgos, I am a part of FOSAC as well. One thing I do here back at home is serve as a council member at my local school district. And there, my job is to literally make sure student voices are heard. That is what I do. That is what I live and breathe. So yeah.
All right. Thank you, Morgan and David. And finally, we have Sudhir Ahmed and Yanan Wang.
Hi, everyone. First off, I just want to say thank you, everyone, for having us, and thank you to everyone for tuning in tonight with everything going on. My name is Sudhir Ahmed. My pronouns are she, her, hers. I'm currently a junior here at SU. I'm also a political science major, and a couple of my involvements are I've been the president of Residential Association for this past year, and I was also vice president the year before that, and I'm also a brother to Phi Alpha Delta.
Hi, everyone. My name is Yanan Wang. My pronouns are she, her, and hers, and I'm from Queens, New York. I am a junior double majoring in international relations and political science. And I guess we just want to talk a little bit more about our vision for our platform. We believe that advocacy is about evolving to the adjusting to the evolving needs of the student body. And when that is done right, there is always something somewhere to improve. And we want to advocate for not only the majority voice, but also those who are drowned out by the majority.
And so I just want to go into a little about what our platform is and the pillars of our platform. But I first off want to start off with we're actually the second pair of women of color to ever run on the same ticket in SU history for Student Association President and Vice President. And so our platform pillars are representation, accountability, sustainability, and accessibility. And thank you again for everyone for having us.
All right, let's get started by addressing the elephant in this virtual room. We're bringing this debate to the student body virtually because of the novel coronavirus. What is your assessment of how the university and student association has handled the situation? Is there anything you would do differently? While each team has a minute and a half to respond.
Yeah, absolutely. Well, I think what David and I would first like to do is commend the university on swift action. But that being said, there's a lot of varying opinions on how the university has handled this. I know some students were able to move out of their dormitories and get their items, while some students are still frustrated that the process hasn't been working for them as well as it could. It's a really tricky situation, and obviously a global pandemic is not something that students are actively prepared for. But I think it's really incredible the work that the schools and colleges have been doing to make sure that their students are taken care of, but also the ingenuity of the students in making masks and supporting our individuals on the front lines of this pandemic. So we really just want to take a moment to appreciate those students for the work that they've been doing.
Hi. Okay. I don't know who was going next, but so Yanan and I have both thought about this critically, and honestly, everyone did the best they could in this current situation. No one knew this was coming, especially to our seniors. I definitely want to empathize with them, not expecting that their senior year was going to end like this. But to the administration and student association, everyone handled the situation the best they could, with the swift action, also proper explanations to the student body of things that needed to be addressed at the current moment. But also at the same time, I'd like to criticize the administration on not making certain funds available to the students that are needed, especially during this time where the economy is drastically dropping. And also, so for students, while they are getting residential refunds, those students who are having a decrease in level of education from transitioning from residential education to an online platform, we should not be paying the same amount. And so this is something that Yanan and I have put forward a petition for, and we hope that you guys can support us. But that is one of the criticism that we would like to give to the administration for not supporting students in all aspects and for giving the money where it's due.
Hi. So I think the university, as most of the candidates said, definitely did their best with what they could in a last-minute situation. I definitely feel like when they originally said March 30th, but then as the situation began to become increasingly worse and it became more obvious that we would not be able to return, I think that they could have communicated quicker, and I think that they could have went about people coming back to get their belongings a certain day. I think that they should have provided more days, because they had said that students couldn't come back till March 30th, and then they made that same weekend the day for students to come back. And although the university has provided more time slots, they're going to provide more time slots later for students to come back. This just served a lot of problems for those that had traveled or just live far away from the university. So I know that was a huge inconvenience. I know that in your question, you asked about how student association handled this, and I'd like to commend Mackenzie and Samia for sending out an email, letting the students know that they're there for them.
All right, next question. University officials have recently said that they are unsure whether on-campus classes at Syracuse University will in fact resume in the fall. If that's the case, how will each of your campaigns continue to advocate for students while working at a distance? We'll ask that each team responds. We'll go with Justine and Ryan first, Morgan and David second, and Sadia and Yanan third, just so we clear up any confusion with orders. And both candidates are allowed to respond.
Yes, so one of the things that Ryan and I have always been open about is just hearing from students, and we provided ways for students to contact us if upfront and then also anonymously, so they could always, despite the physical distance, always reach out to us.
And we want to add that during this time, we would, when it comes to residential classes not resuming, we would attempt to work with the university to make sure that, as Sadia said in the last section, residential learning is not the same as online learning. We would advocate that the university cut the semester's tuition costs accordingly, make sure that financial aid was given accordingly, and make sure that students who were already financially burdened by the university's costs were allowed to continue to attend classes online. We realize that this is out of the university's hands, but at the same time, the university has a responsibility to make sure that all students are given the best opportunity to succeed at this university, given the circumstances.
Absolutely. I think a core part of David and my platform, as we've mentioned, is driven by you, is making sure that we're hearing student voices, how they're feeling at a particular moment. We've put outreaches to so many students. We have a form on our Instagram page where students can reach out to us and express their certain feelings around whatever's happening on campus. I think something that David and I are really looking to do is make sure our students are given the resources that they need individually. Something that we discussed a lot was freshman students, particularly how this year has been so disruptive for them, especially having their first year at a university. So we really want to make sure their needs are looked after. I think this is health and wellness. It's really difficult to maintain your mental health and physical health throughout this period of time. David and I have an extensive platform on health and wellness. Particular ones being counseling services, making sure that counseling services are available to students even remotely, so that they can have individuals to speak with about their individual needs. So it's important things like that, making sure that students are taking care of themselves and making sure that we're in constant communication with them. So that's something that we'd absolutely do.
Okay, so our platform is around the concept of going the extra mile. So we will not wait for you to reach out to us, but instead we will reach out to you, and especially to student groups that are not represented a lot. We will reach out to them and listen to their concerns. And one of our ideas is to host a bi-weekly forum where any student is welcome and they can share their concerns and suggestions, and we can work on them. And then at the next forum, we'll report back on our progress.
Additionally, going off of that, while students are going back to their homes and wherever they reside to have their online classes and academic classes, that does not mean we stop supporting them. So something that's part of our platform is mental health, and trying to push forward a subscription app that is personalized for each student and it's a subscription that will be paid by SU. And so it's personalized counseling. And this is an app that's used by several generations, but it's not pushed forward at a university level. So this would be able to support students while they're at home and for whatever type of counseling that they prefer, whether it's in person or online. And additionally, on top of that, we want to reach out and talk to students and see how we could support them. Also, our petition applies to next semester as well. So making sure that our tuition is cut in half. I should not be paying for a residential experience and a residential academic experience if my quality of education has decreased.
This year, SA initially struggled to fill its assembly. What will you do differently to try and avoid that issue? We'll have Sadia and Yanan go first, Morgan and David second, and then Justine and Ryan will go third.
Sorry, could you quickly repeat that?
Sure. This year, SA
went out real quick.
Yeah. SA initially struggled to fill its assembly. What will you do differently to try and avoid that issue?
Okay, so first of all, I want to start off with the things that are core part of our platform is hosting forums bi-weekly and also meeting with RSOs each semester. That is a place for us to recruit people for student association, and those people who attend our forums are those who want to create change. And those are students who we can ask to become assembly members. And through personal connections that we all have as part of our RSOs, utilizing RSO listservs, and also just communicating with students that we run across from tabling at different multicultural events and also events that Student Association hasn't tabled at the last year.
Right, and so one of Morgan and I's core initiatives is to change the seat distribution of the student assembly itself. So right now you fill up seats based on your Stewart College. However, we recognize that there are more student groups and campus populations that are fighting to have their voice heard. So what we would like to do to make sure that all student voices are heard and that they're actually attracted to join the student assembly is opening seats up for specific campus groups. One thing that we would like to do when we first get into office is promote the liaison program through SA. This allows RSOs to have more of a connection to SA and have more of a role in not only their decisions, but also in improving the organization as a whole. So that's absolutely something we will be focusing on.
Hi, so this is actually a pretty interesting question because I used to be on the Board of Elections and Membership, so I have a pretty good understanding of how to recruit in this area. When I was on the Board of Elections and Membership, I was responsible for recruiting, if I'm not mistaken, not one, but two different architecture students to join SA, which hadn't happened for years. I was responsible for recruiting over 10 of our assembly members for the last year, making sure that we got people from all different colleges like Falk, obviously College of Arts and Sciences, Whitman, architecture, etc. I understand why this is a huge problem. It's mainly because students don't often know about SA to begin with. And I think that David brought up a good point of using the liaison program specifically. This was a program that I actually authored and started and got off the ground in SA, trying to get more liaisons to different cultural orgs on campus. So I would like to see that utilized a lot more. And I do think it's an interesting idea to try to create more or create a different way to distribute seats. Although I do think that will be tougher simply because that would be a constitutional matter, which generally takes roughly a year to implement. It would have had to have been implemented, put on the ballot for this year for it to go into effect next year. So I think that it's definitely something to explore. And I would like to see maybe ways we can get it through in the bylaws by possibly doing it by integrating it into the current system through the bylaws. I think that would be an interesting idea.
May I offer a quick response? I think absolutely, as Ryan mentioned, this is a constitutional change, and this is something that we plan for. Something that we really want to make sure we do is day one of office starts in the spring, not in the fall. This means that we really need to work on pre-planning, setting up initiatives in advance. So this is something that we'd enact with that fully in mind, that this would be a change for next spring. And I think that's really important. I think that's something that David and I prioritize is foresight and being able to pre-plan, because that's really what SA elected officials need, is the ability to say, hey, look, this needs to be done at this certain point in time. and this is what we can do in the meantime. So I think that's something we're really excited to do, in addition to implementing the liaison program, as David mentioned earlier.
I would like to just offer, I was in SA for 2 years, and I specifically actually authored the current the current constitution, and what a mess that was. But I can say that I think that there is a way to get that idea through in the bylaws. It's tricky, but it would probably be about distributing it based by colleges. For instance, creating those groups, but creating them as subsections in the college that would help us bypass the constitution for at least the year. I think that would help us implement this idea a lot quicker.
All right, next question. Student association elections tend to have less than 20% voter turnout, if not a little bit more, a little bit less. Do you think that number is a reflection of the entire student community? And what would your administration do to engage campus, even if we're not necessarily physically there next semester? We'll go with Justine and Ryan to start, Morgan and David after, and we'll wrap up with Sadia and Yanan.
Sorry, I actually lost connection, so may you please repeat the first part of that question? I heard the latter half.
Sure, I'll repeat. The student association elections tend to have voter turnout of 20% or less. Do you think that number is a reflection of the entire Syracuse University community? And what will you do as president of the student association to engage campus?
Definitely. So I think that is such a low percentage, especially when you think about the fact that we have over 15,000 undergraduates at SU. So one of the things that Ryan and I were doing were putting out a call for students to apply for assembly and cabinet seats, but then also when election comes around, we definitely want to put out a call for students to vote more. And if we are elected, one of the things that we definitely love to do is encourage students to vote more, either digitally or online, and even like host events that could be around like voting.
And if I could add to that, we would also utilize the fact that our connections to RSOs on campus, those are where a lot of students find their homes, and we want to make sure that we are well connected. So making sure we have strong connections to RSOs on this campus is important. Utilizing the fact that we are supposed to be talking to the students more often, we want to make sure that part of our platform is about hearing from the students, and we want to make sure that each week we are updating students as to what's going on. Justine and I have said that we may not all like the fact we get Pete Sala's emails, but we definitely know what's going on construction-wise, and that'd be roughly the same way we'd go about it, making sure that students know what's going on in SA and making sure that we're connecting with them on that level rather than just doing it and not having anyone really focus on it.
Yeah, 21% is far too low, especially at a university this large, and we need to bring people together. And something that David and I have been doing has been spending countless hours speaking to organizations so that students can see us face to face, so they can know who we are, what we stand for, and feel motivated to vote. Another piece of this really is how students view SA. I think students don't come out and vote because they don't know the power that SA has to enact and make change. Something that David and I really want to strike down is this idea of SA as an advocacy group. It's not an advocacy group, it's a government. It's a governing body that has the power to enact real and powerful and substantial change, and we'll do that through working with the student body. SA is able to meet with administration. We have monthly and weekly meetings where we can bring students along with us to express their ideas and collaborate with us in making this campus as amazing as it can be, and the home that so many students want it to be. Something that David and I have been doing specifically to increase voter turnout has been having a voter drive through our social media. Actually tomorrow and Friday, we'll be having another voter drive where students can come to our page, like our post and share it, so that we can get students excited about coming out to vote. So that would be what David and I would have to say, and we're really excited, if elected, to be able to motivate the student body to come out and be more engaged in elections.
Right, yeah, that low number is definitely not reflective of the student body. We think that that it's a major problem because SA is so secluded from the rest of campus, and that's because SA doesn't interact with a lot of RSOs and other community groups like that. So if elected, we plan on having and hosting more events with RSOs and also sponsor more multicultural initiatives, because through that we'll get to know more people through plenty of mediums and get them out to vote as well.
And also to add on to that.
Sorry.
Also to add on to that, I want to make sure that it's not only our jobs as candidates to reach out to vote, it's also all the RSOs. I hope that the current Student Association board reaches out to the RSOs that they currently have connections with and help them put out information about voting and enable them to educate their members to show them how to vote, and also to students who aren't part of RSOs, how do we utilize them, and to reach out through academic listservs and through other listservs that SU currently has and utilize those to make sure students are voting. And so next year, something that Yanan and I definitely want to do is meet with people formally, like through our forum and also through RSOs. And so it utilizes all aspects of campus and allows all people to interact with us and make sure that this is not only a problem of exposure, that it's a problem of communicating properly and also maintaining good relationships with all aspects of this campus.
Thank you for that earlier. So I just had a clarifying question, and this is for what Morgan said about advocacy. I was just curious about how you're defining advocacy, because I know that you said that SA isn't an advocacy group, and I think that's true. But advocacy groups actually use various forms of advocacy in order to influence not only public opinion, which would help with getting people more involved, but also policy. And they play an important role in the development of political and social systems. And you just referenced that as a government.
Thank you for the question. I apologize. You are lagging a little bit, so I hope I catch everything that that you said. Yeah, no, we frame ourselves as a government because governments, A, deliver action-driven policies, feasible opportunities, and feasible initiatives for students. But governments also have outreach programs. They're able to reach out to students to collaborate. I think that's the wonderful thing. You know, when you frame SA as a government, you're allowing students to realize that you have the resources to make change, and you get them excited to make change alongside with you. So I think that's why we frame it as a government and not an advocacy group. We are always here to support students and make sure that they're given the resources that they need to thrive. We've enjoyed having conversations with students thus far, and we look forward to having continuing conversations as we create a government that works with them and alongside them.
I just want to say that I know that we have to limit the back and forth due to the way that this debate is structured, but I just want to say that advocacy isn't mutually exclusive to government. In fact, activist governments actually use advocacy to actually inform policy, even.
Before we move on, do you guys
I'm sorry.
want to weigh in on the discussion of the advocacy versus government role of SA?
I would personally love to. Advocacy, as you mentioned, Justine, yes, that drives policy. However, as SA, we aren't just an advocacy group. Like we said, we are also a government group. We don't just advocate for policy, we also make it. So you also have to consider that.
I would like to jump in on that one just because this has been a debate that I had for 2 years when I was in SA. Because I used to be on the side saying that we were a government. When I came in, I asked, why are we called SA, not SG? But I think that the reason why we're not considered a government is because we govern very little, that we make very little unilateral decisions. We spend most of our time, if you're doing it right in SA, is you are advocating to the administration. You are advocating on behalf of students. You are saying, this is what we want. And we do very little other than we govern ourselves in terms of our bylaws and our constitution, and we pass out funding through the finance board, but we do very little work in terms of governing.
I just want to allow Sudhir Ahmed the opportunity to weigh in on this part of the discussion before we move on, if you guys would like to weigh in.
Definitely. So thank you for that. And I definitely agree that while student association is the governing body, it's something that needs to be said that you are representing all the student voices on this campus. And so by representing the student voice of this campus, that is advocacy in and of itself. Advocacy is making sure that those student voices are uplifted and getting to the level that change can be made. And change is advocacy, no matter what form or shape it may take.
All right, thank you.
Yeah, I'm sorry. Do you mind if I jump back in again? My apologies.
30 seconds.
I really just want to emphasize that we're framing this as a government group, but our campaign principle is driven by you. The forethought in our mind is the students. Those are the people that we work for and work with to make change happen. We speak specifically to SA being a government in terms of policy and in terms of creating action-driven change. That does not mean that we will not be listening to student voices. Student voices are what drives us. That's what David and I are passionate about, and that's what we'll continue to focus on throughout our administration.
All right, thank you all. We want to make sure we get to as many topics as possible tonight. Another thing we're going to be doing throughout this debate, we'll be showing you some of Citrus TV's pre-recorded interview with the candidates. This is going to give candidates a chance to maybe take a minute to breathe, grab a sip of water, and give students the opportunity to get a closer look at the campaigns. So earlier this semester, I sat down with Justine and Ryan at the height of the Not Again SU protests. Take a look. All right, it looks like we're having some technical difficulties with that. So we are going to try and come back to that in a minute. First, let's go to the different candidates and ask about the possibility of a 3-year housing requirement has been discussed. What does each team think about that option? We'll start with Morgan and David, then go to Justine and Ryan, and then Sudhir and Yanan.
Right. So the 3-year housing requirement, to just say it has to go. It's not a thing. I'm very disappointed with the university and considering that option. I think I speak for both Morgan and I when I say that. I think I speak for the majority of Syracuse University student body. So if something like that were to come up again, the first thing that we will be doing is make sure we knock it down and make sure we shut it down because that is not acceptable. Not everyone has access to financial means such as 3 years of housing. So it's important that we make sure we're considering every student and each student in all the policy decisions in any department at the university.
So we agree. Justine and I both agree that the 3-year housing agreement is a terrible idea. It's being implemented, I think, in just like maybe a handful of universities across the nation, mainly because it is such a terrible idea to try to force students to be on campus for 3 years. This is, in all honesty, just another way for the university to try to generate revenue as if they haven't gotten enough out of students. And now they're trying to push students even further by asking for another $15,000 for a 3rd year of housing. Speaking specifically to how we would knock it down is we would start conversations in the housing office as well as starting conversations with members of the Board of Trustees. A lot of decisions that are made on this campus are made by the Board of Trustees. They aren't made by individual departments. Individual departments can be consulted, but a lot of times the housing requirements come through based on special commissions offered by the Board of Trustees or through the board themselves. So one thing that we would do is we're emphasizing the fact that we want to get a voice on the Board of Trustees, a vote for students, so that we can have a voice in these discussions and making sure that students that we have a vote against these terrible plans, and then making sure that whenever we do have these conversations, we're doing it in a way that also tells the university that we're not going to acquiesce. We're not going to just say, okay, you're right. We're going to fight back publicly using the bully pulpit of the Student Association to argue against this plan.
Hi. Okay. So as my former position, I was the RHA president for this past year, and I was also involved in RHA since freshman year. And now going into that, because of my position, I was able to work with the housing director and also the Office of Student Living director. And when the first idea of the 3-year housing requirement came out, I went straight to them and I talked to them about this. And funny enough, as Ryan mentioned, these decisions don't come from the departments. They were not aware of this. They did not agree from their personal positions when I spoke to them personally. And so something that I want to state is that currently the resources that SU is providing as a residential are not applicable to having a 3-year housing requirement, nor especially we should not be paying as much for residential the cost of residing on campus with the resources that are provided in our residence halls. So for one thing, before SU wants us to live for 3 years on our campus, upgrade everything, like make sure that all the residence halls are renovated, accessible, and make sure that they have facilities and utilities that students can utilize to make sure that their academic experience is better. Additionally, this is financially inaccessible. For myself as a low-income student, I cannot pay for 3 years of housing. I need the ability for me to pay for housing. I had to join an organization that was paying me a stipend for housing. And that's disgusting for students on campus to have to choose between housing or food. And right now, housing also is linked for living on main campus is also linked to having a meal plan. Meal plans are also not comparable to the food that is available in the dining halls, and so that needs to be reduced as well. There are so many factors that need to be decided before even increasing it to a 3-year housing requirement.
Justine and I can speak to that as well because we were both RAs. I became an RA specifically because I could not afford to stay here and live at Syracuse without being an RA. And funny enough, they ended up jacking up the price for me even more after I was accepted. Justine and I both know the struggle, as we've seen our residents have to struggle with this. We've seen other RAs struggle with this. This university needs to stop tacking on every insane price that they want so that they can squeeze every student squeeze as much money out of every student as possible.
Ryan, if I can ask, you mentioned the board of trustees, and I believe you and Justine have a petition currently going on to allow a vote for students and graduate students. What will you guys be doing if the board of trustees denies that request? Yeah.
So if they deny it, we're not going to stop advocating for it. When the university says no, that isn't a sign for us to stop advocating for it. We're going to intensely lobby every Board of Trustees member, because how this is done is the Board of Trustees will have to amend their bylaws. I believe it's section 4, subsection 6. I'm not entirely certain. I haven't seen that section in a while, to give each of us half a vote. And if they say no, we'll come back at it again. We'll try to get more advocacy from the University Senate, other student orgs, try to build momentum for it and come back with it. We're not going to stop advocating just because they say no one time.
All right, next question. All of you, I believe, have said at some point so far tonight that you would like the university to partially refund or reduce tuition moving forward in light of the transition to online classes. But recently, Vice Chancellor Mike Haney told me the university is already struggling financially under the distance learning model. How would you suggest the university balance its own financial stability against the cost incurred by students? We'll start with Justine and Ryan, go to Morgan and David, and conclude with Sadia and Yanan.
So I will speak on this briefly. I know that Ryan has experience in the University Senate, and so that's why I'm going to allow him to speak more on this after I speak. But he's observed that the University Senate, they do this annual budget report, and he's observed that a lot of senators and students alike feel like the university spends money on initiatives that we don't feel are necessary. One of them being that the DPS budget was 0.8% of the whole budget, I believe, last year. And then also faculty have criticized that research projects have been funded very modestly. So one of the things we'd like to do is try and allocate funds for necessary.
So yeah, I can jump in on this. My time in the University Senate allowed me to see that budget be analyzed by the university. And while the University Senate doesn't get to say yes or no, we would be able to review it and we would be able to make suggestions. We just paid to have a smoothie bar put in the Barn Center. I think we can afford to put some money back in the pockets of students who asked for, who are not getting the best quality of education. The university has to change its priorities here. They spend way too much money on projects that just aren't necessary, or they overspend on projects consistently. We need to rein in that budget. We need to advocate to the Board of Trustees and to university departments on this.
Obviously, this is a really difficult situation, but at the end of the day, there are students really struggling to make ends meet financially, and we need to do what we can to make sure that the money is split up equitably and given to the students who need it most. This situation is unprecedented, but we're all in it together, and we have the ability to move forward together to help those of us that are really struggling and in a desperate position. I think it's just a matter of the university offering up resources for students, both financial and non-financial resources, such as the counseling center. We'll absolutely keep pushing for this to happen, but it's just a matter of making sure that we give the money to the students who need it most. It's so important that we stand together as a community and support those who are in need of support. So David and I will do everything that we can to make sure that happens.
Okay, so Syracuse University has an endowment fund that is approximately $1.4 billion, and a partial refund for, let's say, 20,000 students is only a fraction of that amount. And according to the university's Office of the Treasurer Fund Handbook, that endowment is unrestricted and provide the stable support that enables the university to respond to new challenges and new difficulties. And right now, the university's priorities should be to support its students during this time.
So I just want to quote the handbook like Yanon stated, and specifically it says, an endowed fund is established to last in perpetuity, with only the payout from the fund spent each year to support Syracuse University's goals and priorities. Priorities meaning students. Okay. Also, it states many of these endowments are unrestricted and provide the stable support that enables the university to respond to new challenges and opportunities. I believe a pandemic is a new challenge, and so supporting the students should be a priority for the university, and whether that means financially, academically, but this is a step that the university needs to take in order to make sure that we are on the path to achieving a lifetime goal and to go for our careers, because as at the moment, that money is there. The university is not allowing many groups on campus to spend their money because of financial difficulties. But if that money is not being utilized and they're being halted, that money is still there on top of the endowment fund. So honestly, it's safe to say, we honestly don't believe that that the university is struggling with financial costs.
All right, thank you. We're going to try once again to go to that pre-recorded interview where I sat down with Justine and Ryan at the height of the Not Again SU protest that took place this semester. All right, we're gonna try doing it from a different computer. Just give me 1 second. I'm gonna try sharing it myself. I have it up right now. All right, it seems like we're having some technical difficulties, so we'll just kind of re-ask those questions. Again, we want to discuss the Not Again SU protests that, as obviously you all know, took place throughout the school year. So we'll go through each team and just tell us your position and if you fully support the protests and their demands. We'll start with Morgan and David, then Sadia and Yanan, and then Justine and Ryan.
Absolutely. David and I wholeheartedly support the Not Again SU movement. We support the movements of the Jewish, Indigenous, international students that are continually fighting for really positive change on our campus. The administration has not been working for the students, and these movements have really highlighted that. Their demands have highlighted that, and the change that they've been able to achieve has highlighted that. As student association, we really want to make sure that we're supporting these groups. SA has power. We're, like we mentioned earlier, a governing body. We have meetings with administration, and we'd love to make sure that these movements have a seat at the table, just as they've been working for the last year and for the last 4 years. Students have really done a phenomenal job, and we want to commend them and continue to support them. So yeah, that's what we'll do as a representative government.
Hi. Okay. So we definitely want to commend the efforts of all the Not Again SU organizers and also those who took action on behalf of the international students, the Jewish students, and also the Indigenous students. That was a form of advocacy, and that was a form of uplifting student voices and also fighting for the needs of marginalized students on this campus. And so something that I do want to say is these protests were very much needed. You know, and I definitely agree with all the demands that were put forward, but we also want to commend the Student Association, specifically Mackenzie and Samia, for putting that voice out there and making sure that they got the recognition that they deserved, and also making sure that the student body was informed of all the movements that were happening on campus. At the same time, I'd like to criticize the administration for not putting all the demands on the website and also not being thorough with the progress on them, and also marking some as complete, which aren't completed at all. These demands, to fulfill them, will honestly take forever, and none of them should be marked as complete, regardless of whether it's a temporary or a permanent demand that's being made. For some demands that were put on the website, some are marked as complete with little to no initiatives that were put forward and also no visibility at all. If there are changes being made, and there are changes being made on behalf of those demands, that should work towards a change on campus culture, and clearly there isn't at the moment.
So it's really interesting speaking about Not Again SU because, a lot of the candidates were speaking about it like as a movement, but a lot of the core organizers are my friends. And, I've been following the movement since the very start. And I want to commend the movement, definitely, because it was one of the most diverse and inclusive movements of Syracuse history. And they were able to achieve a lot of what the general body, another student movement in 2014, couldn't. And they were able to enact real change and policy on this campus. And it was actually one of the things that inspired Ryan and I to run. It's one of the reasons why we structured our campaign as around an advocacy group. And, it's interesting that people are talking about feasibility and if it's realistic, a lot of the things in our campaign that could get done. But core organizers themselves even had doubts if a lot of what they wanted to achieve could get done. But here we are, because of Not Again SU, we have $10 million in scholarships for students who need it the most. We have free printing and laundry services. We have a multicultural learning living community expansion. And we have administrators listening. We have the board of trustees for the first time ever forming special advisory councils to sit down with students and really get to hear what they need. That's why I'm saying we can't regress back on this progress, but keep pushing forward. This is one of the special opportunities for Student Association. And I think the next candidates need to take advantage of the fact that the administration is willing to listen. Thanks.
Going off of that, it's also important to note that back in 2014, the university tried to silence the general body by refusing to negotiate anymore. We have to anticipate that the university will try to do the same thing with Not Again SU. And as SA, we need to make sure that that is not an opportunity that they can take. Making sure that when and if they try to do that, we as a student association are willing to say, nope, this is not okay. We're not going to allow you to shut them out. We bring Not Again SU back and make sure that their demands are met and make sure that they are kept at the table. Making sure that the university doesn't try to cut them out like they did the general body has to be critical for the next SA.
Right, and so I personally have a very big connection to Not Again SU. I think if Not Again SU organizers are listening, I've been there since day one. I think what's common with this university is history repeating itself, and administrators not doing anything about it. I think Morgan and I really want to be that change and make sure history doesn't repeat itself again. However, that's not a promise, but that's something that we can help with and prevent anything like this to ever happen again. But it's still important to recognize that this Not Again SU movement, a Black student-led movement, they're making history, and it's important that the university recognizes that and puts in the effort to make sure the demands are met.
Okay, we are going to give this one last try. If it doesn't work, then we'll just move on and forget about playing these. So we have someone new in here trying to share their screen, and we'll see if this technical adjustment works out this time. Sorry. All right. It looks like we got it to play this time, but we don't have any audio. We are just not going to show those segments tonight. But if you head to CitrusTV.com, you can check out the 3 interviews with each team of candidates on your own time. I apologize for those challenges that we just had there. So moving on, the role of the Student Association President is to act as the student representative to the Board of Trustees and the SU administration. So given all that has happened on campus recently, how would you work to bridge that divide between students and administrators? Sorry, let's have Sadia and Yanan go, then Justin and Ryan, and then Morgan and David.
Okay, so something about working with administration is something that Yanan and I have both done. We've both already been in those rooms. We've had experience with working with the Rob Bradsky, Marion Thompson, Keith Alford. I personally, as RHA president, go into like 2-3 meetings with them every other week. And so I've already developed a relationship with them, which is something that I won't have to get past. But also on top of that, something that we've both done is develop that relation of communication with them by telling them the honest truth of what the student body actually needs. And that's something that they really need to hear. There is no sugarcoating over what the student body wants or needs. And on top of that, the administration needs to start prioritizing that. And something that I've learned with my past, I guess, year, I would say, of working with the administration is that putting forth something is being assertive and making sure that the administration is clear that this is what the students needs and it's not something that can be debated or negotiated upon. And so being assertive in what the student body represents and making sure that those needs and wants are advocated for until the very end. And so from the administration side, something that needs to be done from them is they need to be more proactive about reaching out to students. It shouldn't be only student association. It should also be them as well. So holding them accountable for making sure that they're speaking with students on a regular basis and making sure that they're having those connections with students on a daily basis as well.
Yes, so bridging that gap between students and administration. Well, one of the things that I want to do is definitely increase more of those board of trustees, special advisory committees that they've had, and allow it to not be this low-key, secretive thing where they only email certain student groups about it, but actually making it open for more students to join. Because one of the problems that I found with that is that, again, they only spoke to certain groups, and that they were only for a select allotted amount of time. So if a student had to miss class or an exam or an activity to go to those meetings, because it was just at that one point of time in the day, it just creates difficulty in communication with students. So definitely pushing for more of those board of trustees meetings, especially because it's something that people have been fighting for since way before I arrived at SU. And also just not the board of trustees, because I acknowledge and recognize that these are extremely important people and they have their own lives they've got to get to, and a lot of them don't even live in Syracuse, but definitely increasing conversations between the upper administration and students. And I agree a lot with what Sadia just said about it just not being with student association and the administration, but with students directly.
Yeah, I think it's really important to note that student movements have been working for better relationships with the Board of Trustees for a while. Speaking specifically to the Jewish student demands, they demanded a council with the Board of Trustees, and that's something that they're continuing to push for and will advocate for. Just speaking quickly, I know this question was addressed to the president, but David and I see ourselves very much as almost co-presidents, if you will. Like, we are both working for the same positive change with the student body, driven by them. Something we can do to hold the administration accountable. David and I put in our initiatives quarterly newsletter. You may ask yourselves, what if the administration doesn't want to comment in our quarterly newsletter? Well, then we'll say that. We will tell the students with transparency that administrators either are or are not working for them. We go to meetings with administrators and board of trustee members. We can take those meeting notes and submit them to the student body, delivering a level of transparency unparalleled by previous administrations. And that's something that will really work to do. So that's partly how we'd bridge the gap between us and the Board of Trustees, but it's all about bringing students along with us. And I also think making sure that we hold the Board of Trustees accountable for reacting to things. The Board of Trustees is so reactionary, and we need to make sure that they're more on top of certain situations. They only came back to campus for Not Against You because they were starving students. We need to hold them accountable so that they're not reactionary. They take action immediately.
May I respond, especially because it's very relevant since we're talking about bridging that gap between students and administration. The one thing I will say, though, is I really admire you and Morgan's stance on, a strong partnership, especially because the relationship between the president and vice president is a strong partnership. It's a team. But one of the things that I want to make clear to viewers watching is that the SA president has a big responsibility that the vice president does not share, is that they are actually the ones that sit with the Board of Trustees. So I just think it's something that people keep in mind who also is running in the presidential role, because that is the role that will sit with the governing body that can actually enact the structural change that this campus needs. But that's all.
I think it's also important to keep in mind that just because things have been done in the past doesn't mean that's how they have to be done in the future. Our campaign is continually driven for change. David and I are co-presidents. We work together to make sure that change happens. That's how we choose to run our administration, and that's how we will continue to do so if elected. So I suggest that we begin looking forward and not back into what we've done in the past. And I know David may have a comment.
Yeah, so another thing to make sure you know as well is that whoever sits on the Board of Trustees is not just who they specifically are, it's if they can represent you as a student. So also keep that in mind with who SA president is as well.
I want to comment that this isn't a practice of the president being a member. It's written into the Constitution that the Board of Trustees has the president sitting with them. So we can talk about making change. When it comes to next year, that will almost certainly be the president and another person. So I think it's important to realize what our constraints are for next year.
Yeah, that's absolutely understood, and I look forward to sitting on the board of trustees and working with them tirelessly. But the transfer of information between David and I is very much collaborative, as we've been with the student body. It's that collaboration piece. We bring students along with us to enact the change that they want to see. So we're really excited to be able to do that.
All right, we're going to be moving on to our next question. So the university has made several commitments to student protesters in the Not Again SU movement over the last 2 semesters. How will you hold the university accountable for these commitments? We'll start with Justine and Ryan, move on to Morgan and David, and conclude with Sadia and Yanan.
I'm actually glad that you asked that question because it's one of the things that Ryan and I made a point to emphasize, especially after the recent news that the SU administration won't sign on to the commitments that they made to students. So we're pushing to keep the administration accountable. And I think that first starts with getting something in writing. And although I know that students have had past experiences where they've had something in writing from the administration and they still don't follow through, definitely something in writing, a document that we could refer to will help with keeping them accountable. And one of the things is that the support for their demands, along with the demands of the Jewish students, international students, and Indigenous students, are incorporated with, it's the very first platform.
Yeah, so this year, obviously, there's been a lot of concerns addressed and a lot of demands that need to still be addressed throughout the next school year. If you know an SA, VP, or president now or in the past, you know they have several meetings all the time with different administrators. And I think it's pretty simple to say, hey, not against you. Hey, Jewish students, Indigenous students, international students, sit on this meeting. Let's make sure that your voice is heard. And that's exactly what Morgan and I will be doing. That's how we can establish transparency as well as accountability to make sure all demands are met for those student groups and other student groups on the Syracuse University campus.
Right, so accountability is actually one of our platforms. We want to do that because at the end of the day, we don't work for the administration, we work for the students. So we will keep the administration accountable by just keep on following up with them and keep on making sure that they're having these concrete changes being implemented every step of the way in order for us to serve the students. And I'll let City add on too.
And additionally, on top of that, so just as Not Against You is asking for a concrete strategic plan that like DPS utilizes to make decisions, we want to ask for that for the administration. So taking us back to the Day Hall incident, some of the first decisions that were made were whether or not to communicate the incident to the Day Hall residents, and that was made by the current administration. So there needs to be a specific output and like a specific plan that needs to be put out to the student body to make sure that they know what the decision-making process is in order to make that decision of not communicating it to the residents, or let's say which severity of the incident requires what response. And so making sure that that is available to students so that the students can hold the administration accountable, and also on top of that, that the administration can hold themselves accountable.
All right, and we would like to ask one final clarifying question for each of the campaigns. Not Again SU has called for the resignation of several SU administrators, including Chancellor Ken Siverud and DPS Chief Bobby Maldonado. We'd like to ask each campaign a quick yes or no answer. Do you endorse these demands? Please limit your responses to yes or no. We'll go in the same order as the last question, Justine and Ryan, Morgan and David, and then concluding with Sadia and Yanan.
Yes.
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 Great, a yes from everybody. All right, we're going to move on to a section of this debate where we have questions that are tailored to specific campaigns. So each campaign isn't going to be answering the question like we had been. We're going to target some of the things you guys have said on social media about like your different platforms and some questions that students had. So for that first question is going to be for Justine and Ryan. One of the pillars of your campaign is to, quote, prioritize campus and financial accessibility. What does accessibility mean to you, and how will you make steps towards making SU more accessible?
Definitely. So I'll tackle this one. As a low-income student, financial accessibility is a huge platform on our campaign, and there are many components to that. So one of the things that we're fighting for is definitely expanding the free GRE prep program so students have free GRE prep resources. Freezing the tuition, supporting that not again SU demand, because we want to create a more economically diverse student body. We want to work on textbook affordability so that students who have professors that write their own textbooks or require an access code or have to purchase so many in 1 year can definitely be able to afford to go here. One of the things that Ryan and I were talking about is just not, we want students to be able to live here and not survive here. One of the things that we want to do is increase more work study / non-work study options, because I had lost my job at Byrd Library my sophomore year because my work study funds run out. But if we created a combined job opportunity like that, students who have work study can use their funds, and then students who don't have work study have easier access to jobs. So it's a huge platform, financial accessibility. There's definitely even more on the platform, and I encourage you checking us out on our page, Justine and Ryan 2020, to hear more about it.
All right, moving on to Morgan and David's campaign. One component of your campaign so far is what you've referred to as a voter's choice platform. Could the two of you expand on exactly what that means?
Yeah, we'd love to. This is something that David and I are super passionate about. We've mentioned it a few times now, but our principle is driven by you. And as part of that, we wanted a real and tangible way that students could say, hey, look, our voice is being heard and being acted upon. As we've visited organizations, spoken to them remotely, talked to individuals, we've gathered a whole bunch of incredible thoughts and ideas from students that we plan to act on, because ultimately, what's your passion is our passion, and what's your concern is our action. And that's what we want to prioritize as an administration. Something we've heard a lot has been making sure that there's a professional closet on campus, so students who aren't able to afford professional clothes can go and get some for an interview. Free laundry, improving the South Campus housing process, better information on trolleys, making sure that there's specific counselors for various student needs that you can sign up with at the Barn Center. Students are ultimately what drive this campus, and those are the individuals that we work with, work alongside, and represent. So we're so excited to have this platform. It's been really incredible hearing everyone's thoughts, and we look forward to hearing more of their thoughts in the coming week.
Sadia and Kanan, neither of you have any experience with student association. What then makes you qualified for the roles of student association president and vice president, and how will you make up for that lack of experience with SA?
Okay, although neither of us have experience in SA, we are currently both presidents of large organizations on campus. Thus, we have that experience of the administrative part of organizing an organization, and we have had the experience of representing student voices from our communities. So we'll bring that into the role.
Additionally, on top of that, I just want to elaborate and say, like, we've already been in those rooms of the administration, which is a core part of the student association roles. And so having that relationship will make the transition process even shorter for us to make sure that we're getting right to it, and so that we can get right on top of making sure that we're representing voices properly and actually doing stuff for the student body.
All right, now turning back to Justine and Ryan. Another pillar of your campaign is to hold SA accountable. What's your plan to accomplish that?
Yes, so our plan to keep SA accountable definitely has to do with the weekly emails that Ryan touched on earlier. So the last minute notes from SA meetings were all the way from September 23rd, 2019. So when SA has weekly meetings, we want to make sure that we're transcribing the meeting notes of those meetings and sending it out to the student body. So it's going to be on what we're discussing, what we're working, how far we've gotten along on our initiatives, and even And the weekly thing might encourage students to want to join on, and we're going to keep it open so that students who aren't even in the assembly or cabinet can come to these meetings and engage. That's why that weekly reminder is helpful, especially if a student feels like a certain topic is covered in a certain meeting where they probably didn't really care that much about campus accessibility, but if we're covering financial accessibility that week, they'd love to attend. So we plan on weekly minute notes and making sure that whatever we do is for the students and not our own agenda.
We also want to make sure that we use the rollover budget to support students. Many students don't know what rollover is, and that whole budget is unused funds from the year prior. And we want to make sure that that fund is given to student organizations to use. The one for next year is going to be incredibly large due to the fact that so many events were canceled. And we want to keep SA accountable because last year they funded a $250,000 concert that hosted a homophobe on campus. We can't do that again. We want to make sure that SA is accountable to the students and making sure that we're spending the money in a way that will bolster student orgs and student needs.
Morgan and David, on your Instagram, you emphasize that your campaign team is entirely composed of women, but there's not a woman on your ticket. How can you guarantee that you will accurately represent a part of the student body that you aren't a member of?
Sure. So I think this is a great time to clarify that our ticket isn't Morgan and David. It's not Morgan Eaton and David Williams. It is driven by you, the student body. We are not just representing ourselves going into these positions. We're here to represent you as students. So our ticket does not just encompass 2 males. It encompasses all 15,000 undergraduate students and all students who are trying to make impact on their campus.
All right, transitioning to Sadia and Yanan. Your transparency platform includes open forums with the SA president and VP 2 times a month and a meeting with an RSO once a semester. Do you think that those are realistic goals in terms of time management and judging all the responsibilities you would have as SA president and vice president, as well as full-time students?
So something that I just want to say, like personally, as the RHA president this past year, I've actually had pretty much about the same hours I've had to work on that as the SA president requires for their job. And so I utilized that to kind of fit in whether we would be able to meet with as many RSOs and host those forums. And honestly, yes, to be fully transparent, I'm planning on taking 12 credits to make sure that I can prioritize SA. And that is one of my prioritizations because students' needs are really important. And so that is something that's feasible and also really important to make sure that we're doing the SA position properly. In order to represent the student voices and the needs, you have to meet with the students. And that's something that we want to promise the student body is that we want to host forums that we can speak to you and we can make sure that we're accurately representing your voices and needs. And meeting with the RSOs, something that the Student Association hasn't really done in the past years from what I know, is meet with every single RSO. And that's important when new RSOs embody a huge portion of this campus students and the student body. And so meeting them already allows the Student Association to speak to a huge portion of students and hear their voices and hear their needs. And on top of that, the forum allows for other students who aren't utilizing those RSOs as part of their Syracuse experience.
So I have a question, Sadia. So you mentioned meeting all RSOs. And Syracuse University has over 300 RSOs on campus. What is your plan for meeting every single organization?
So I just want to clarify that meeting every single organization does not, the amount of weeks that there are in a semester, it's feasible to meet all those organizations. So from what I'm seeing, it's about 300 RSOs that SU currently has. And if you look at the amount of days in a semester and also the amount of hours in a day, for someone who's taking 12 credits, that's honestly does not comprise a lot of your week. So looking at a 20-hour work week and on top of, honestly, I went down to the technicalities when envisioning this platform. And when you put everything together, spending those meetings, whether they're half an hour, an hour, depending on what those RSOs need for themselves, it does fit into the semester. And also it depends if the RSO actually wants to meet. I have to make sure that they want to meet the Student Association, and there are times when RSOs will not be responsive. They're also inactive RSOs. So just for the student body, be mindful of that when you view this, that this is also encompassing a student for Yunnan and I, who is prioritizing SA as part of our senior year.
Well, I think that's a great way to think about our liaison program, which we just mentioned earlier with, again, Ryan, who started that. So do you think you could use that as an avenue for meeting all RSOs, or do you think just you and Yanan will be the only two people meeting with them?
I definitely don't believe it only should be Yanan and I. I would say it's important for the student president, vice president to meet all the RSOs. In addition to, let's say, if the student liaison program is something that student body wanted, I would say, like, let's go for it, because that is what the student body needs and wants. But for the president, vice president, when they're in those rooms, they need to have those conversations in the back of their mind. That first-hand experience, those conversations, is what will bring them to those tables and those meetings with the administration.
So just to clarify again, you will only use the liaison program if the students think it's needed. So it is now on campus, and it was made for a need. So you'll only use it if you see a need, but other students do. I just kind of need a little bit of clarification. Do you think it's needed or not?
So I would definitely say, like, so the student body agrees that it's needed, then yes, we are putting it forward. But I would still say that we still, as if Nana and I were to be elected, we would still meet with the RSOs regardless of whether they would be a student liaison or not, because that is important to have that background, no matter what, who may be in those rooms and whoever may take on those liaison positions.
All right, moving on now. Over the last few days, the Student Association has asked members of the SU student body to submit their questions for the candidates. We received a lot of questions from students, and we will do our best to make it through as many as possible before tonight's debate concludes. The first question is directed to all three campaigns. Several students asked, how do you feel about the College Republicans receiving funding approval for a possible speaking event with Ben Shapiro? We will begin with Morgan and David, move then to Justine and Ryan, and conclude with Sadia and Yanan.
Yeah, so as we put on our Instagram today, our campaign does not support speakers and visitors who perpetuate hate and bigotry and prejudice. And we just want to emphasize that we stand with the Finance Board's decision to deliver unbiased and nonpartisan decisions based on the finance codes. And we just want to emphasize that we're going to encourage DPS to conduct a thorough review of the events to ensure that the safety of students is prioritized, because at the end of the day, that's what truly counts and that's what really matters. So if you'd like to read more on that, I would encourage you to go to our Instagram and look at that.
So Justine and I are proud of the fact that we were the first campaign to call out this horrendous idea of a speaker. Ben Shapiro does not represent conservative values. He represents this hateful vision of America that we can't tolerate. And we've made it clear we're not going to support in any way, shape, or form bringing someone to campus who has this vision. We understand the Finance Board had constraints and we don't blame them for this, but what we also know is that the Student Assembly had the opportunity to ask who the speaker was, didn't, and approved this budget. They should have used this opportunity to ask who the speaker was, make an informed decision, and then deny it. We shouldn't be bringing someone to campus who will not address transgender students properly and will make sure that they do everything they can to antagonize marginalized students. This shouldn't be a hard question. And in all honesty, we don't need to wait for DPS to vet this, knowing that we also know that DPS isn't exactly reliable when it comes to supporting marginalized students on this campus. We need to make sure that as a student association, we are firm in our stance that Ben Shapiro should not be receiving SA funds and that he does not represent the values of this university. Justine and I stand strong. We've already got a resolution out there which has, last time I checked, almost 90 signatures from other students on campus, many of them involved in student protesting because they realize that this is a terrible idea. When students from organizations that are consistently marginalized are being denied budgets left and right, but for some reason a hateful speaker is being invited to campus, someone has to ask why. And that's what Justine and I have done. And we hope that you can also go to our Instagram at Justine and Ryan 2020 to sign on to that resolution.
Okay. So when looking at this, whole issue, Yanan and I kind of broke down what our personal statements were and what our student leader jobs were. And personally, we definitely condone Ben Shapiro coming to this campus. But as a student leader, as candidates for student association, who's supposed to oversee all of students and represent their needs, and seeing that the finance board is supposed to approve these, which is a nonpartisan group, we definitely see how the finance board made this decision. And while personally we do condone this, we want to make sure that the student body understands that there are students on this campus who identify with the beliefs and of Ben Shapiro, and we can't have that dictatorship and say that they can't bring that person onto campus, because if it was the opposite, if it was the opposite situation, other students would revolt as well. And so what we're saying is that for other students, you guys know when Ben Shapiro is coming to campus, mobilize, protest in front of Ben Shapiro, showing up and showing your that you don't support him. But also on top of that, if you were to create a whole different event with a speaker that we identify with as students who condemn hate speech, as students who condemn any acts against different marginalized groups, and give more publicity to that, have students show up to that, and have students support a unified student body and condemn Ben Shapiro.
So
Yeah.
I would like.
I'm just going to have you guys follow up, because as they just pointed out, there are clearly students on campus who do identify with Ben Shapiro's values, or we wouldn't be having this conversation.
That's understandable, but we're talking about a person who has said that people who are Muslim live in sewage and that they're basically subhuman. We're talking about a man who has publicly stated that transgender individuals are mentally ill. We're talking about a man who believes that I don't have the right, I should not have the right to marry someone, that I shouldn't have the right to adopt kids. This isn't conservatism, this is hate. People can identify with his language, that's fine, but that doesn't mean that we need to invite this to campus and pay him to do it. If we want to have conservative voices, the college Republicans can find a host of people who don't fit this bill and could honestly better represent their values. We need to make sure that we are inviting speakers who are inclusive for all students. We know damn well that he wouldn't be that type of a person, and we need to take a stand as a student association to say no to this.
So I'd like to respond to that, if that's okay. Okay.
Yeah.
Just stating on this is that while there are students who identify with these beliefs, obviously personally, Nana have I stated that we do not support Ben Shapiro. As a Muslim myself, those were very hurtful to my personal identity. But we can't promote dictatorship. We can't promote something of like controlling who someone brings to campus. And so from this, we want to say is that education, aligning with those beliefs from my personal view is not okay, and that stems from education. So we need to promote discourse. We need to promote more debates with the college Republicans. We need to have more discussions with them of why they're asking this speaker to come to campus with everything going on. And that promotes a change of student culture on this campus, and also that promotes a step forward of promoting dialogue on this campus and making sure that we can educate students on different cultures and the experiences of marginalized students on this campus.
I want to say that we can do all of that without inviting a white supremacist to campus. That is entirely possible to have those dialogues without inviting Ben Shapiro. And wanting those dialogues are great, but it doesn't support why we would bring Ben Shapiro. I mean, once again, his comments aren't productive. His whole goal is to antagonize students who disagree with him and to, once again, outright misgender transgender students. This isn't appropriate, and there are 100 better conservative speakers that they could have brought. We need to say no.
I know you all feel very strongly about this, but we do want to get through as many questions from students as possible. I want to give Morgan and David one last opportunity to weigh in if there's anything else you two would like to add to the discussion, and then we're going to move on to some more questions from students.
Yeah, so I think a lot of great points have been made in the past few minutes. And I think it's really important that we make sure that we're understanding that there are so many different students on this campus and they all have different beliefs. But we can promote a lot of things, but I think we really need to be promoting health and we need to be promoting positivity. So having someone on campus who does not share those ideals and want to spread that, we need to make note of that, and as SA, we need to be addressing that appropriately.
Right, thank you. Our next question is from a student named Aaron. He wants to know, what initiatives will you implement to address dating violence and stalking on campus? We're going to start with Sadia and Yanan, go to Justine and Ryan, and end with Morgan and David.
Could you repeat that question really quickly? Sorry, my audio went out again.
No worries. Yeah. Aaron wants to know, what initiatives will you implement to address dating violence and stalking on campus?
Okay, so something that needs to be done is during Welcome Week that those modules, those initiatives that are done to educate students on this, those need to be scrapped and redone altogether. Those do not educate students on different behaviors on this campus, and also just like the lack of transparency from this university about those numbers is disgusting. And so something I do want to address about both aspects is there's the mental side and there's also the physical aspect of this. And so while educating students and making sure that DPS is holding a lot of the Greek life accountable as well, I don't want to identify certain groups, but that a lot of the dating violence and sexual violence do occur at a lot of these Greek life chapters, primarily the white chapters on this campus. And so DPS needs to hold them accountable and for the actions that take place under these in these houses, but also for the mental health aspect, making sure that there's counselors and there's proper support for them, no matter how they may need or whether it be in-person counseling or also digitized counseling through the subscription app that we hope to be pushing forward.
Yes, so I'm actually proud of this because this is one of the things that I love most about our camp platform is that we're working to support survivors of sexual assault, but that definitely extends to sexual harassment or stalking or dating violence. So we actually did our research on this. And in a spring 2018 survey, the students who reported these things said that who responded to the survey said that they never reported these things. And the reason as to why is probably because survivors of these things have to choose between justice and anonymity and staying anonymous. So one of the things that Ryan's been working for 3 years is to bring Callisto, a third-party anonymous sexual assault reporting system, to the university. And like I said, it extends beyond sexual assault. So one of the key things about Callisto is that other colleges who report to use it, like the University of Stanford and the University of Oregon, have all said that their students are 6 times more likely to seek out these services. And so it only costs around $30,000 a year to run. So it's definitely financially feasible. And it's something that needs to be advocated for because, again, students who experience these things don't have an avenue to report them anonymously. And it's a traumatic and scary, sensitive experience. So they need some kind of system to do this, and this technology will do that.
Right, and as you just mentioned, Justine, Ryan has been working on getting that software, Callisto, onto campus for 3 years now. Ryan, for the past 3 years, what have been your strategies for getting that software onto campus? And if you are elected for the next academic year, what will your strategies be for now on to actually bring that back or bring that to campus, for this year?
Thanks for that question. So the first strategy that I had was to go to the Title IX office to discuss it. And Callisto, for those who don't know, as Justine said, is an anonymous sexual assault reporting system. It's third party. It wouldn't be run through the university, and it would allow students to report anonymously, to timestamp their report so that they can hold on to it and report it at a later date whenever they felt comfortable. And now it's offering legal counseling and legal services, which is another great aspect of Callisto. So we went to Title IX in my freshman year, and we tried to get answers from them there, and they said that there's an issue with indemnity and an issue with internet security. So I went back to other colleges who had it, and I asked them. They said that neither was a problem and that the indemnity clause was pretty boilerplate. I actually stopped Kent on the quad to say, hey, we need to have this conversation. And he said that he supported this system. So we're going to keep going forward. We're going to go next to the council's office to see what they think and to try and get them on our side. And then hopefully we'll get it passed through the Board of Trustees, Title IX, and DPS.
Yeah, so in terms of this, David and I would really like to bring back the Advocacy Center. The Advocacy Center closed in 2014, and it was pushed for by the general body to have it reopened. The Advocacy Center brought support, information, and advocacy for survivors and students, and that's something that's really needed on our campus. So David and I are going to work desperately with administrators and with students to make sure that that Advocacy Center is brought back to give a supportive environment and really make a shift in campus culture. So we're super excited to continue and start pushing for the Advocacy Center.
I would just like to respond real quick about the Advocacy Center, because it's something I spoke to upper administration about bringing back, and that's why Ryan and I actually settled for Callisto, because their argument is that the Barnes Center also serves as a way for people to reach out and get support for sexual assault, and they keep referring students back to the Department of Public Safety, to the Title IX office. So I definitely agree with you that the cutting of the Advocacy Center is definitely objectionable and it should come back, but I've tried that avenue of trying to advocate for it, and they keep responding with that, oh, a student could go to the Barnes Center or these other resources on campus. So if you don't mind me asking, how would you go about advocating for the Advocacy Center?
Well, I think the first question is, great, we can go to this place to report this, but where can we go to learn? Where can we go to attack the culture on this campus to better it? That's what the first thing we'll be doing, because we have to ask the right questions to get things done. So Morgan, do you have anything to add to that?
Absolutely. I think we actually see the Barnes Center as a positive in this, because that's, I know lots of conversations recently have been, we want certain centers back on campus, but we just don't have the space for it, the space to accommodate it. And we see the Barnes Center as a really central location that we can tap into to create a safe space for survivors and for general students to increase their awareness and change campus culture. So I think it's all about how we frame it and who we talk to make sure that that can happen. So we see it as advantageous, actually.
All right, thank you all. We are running a bit low on time at the moment, but we want to get a few more questions in from students. So we're going to have a rapid fire round. We're going to ask each campaign to limit its response to 30 seconds and try to limit any back and forth just so we can get through the remainder of these questions. First off, AJ asked, many students have lost faith in our university and the administration over the last few months. How do you plan to revitalize students' interest in faith in Syracuse University?
Absolutely. First things, transparency. David and I have talked about it a lot tonight, making sure that administrators' comments are clear, concise, and given to the students. I think we need to continue supporting student movements that advocate for change. They've been doing a phenomenal job, and I think we need to hold the administration accountable for the demands that they have committed to. Additionally, we really want to improve our relationship with the Syracuse community, because that's how you build stronger connections. David and I both have internship opportunities within the city. I work with New Americans in mental health. We have an Off the Hill initiative that prioritizes community involvement and engagement, and through that we can build faith in not just Syracuse University, but in Syracuse City and Onondaga County, and that's something we're really excited to pursue.
I'll jump in because I'm not sure if we're going in a certain order here. In terms of building faith with the university, with students, because they lost faith in the university, obviously, and that's justifiable and completely understandable when you have an administration that makes it a point that they don't really actively try to listen to student needs. The fact that not again, SU had to have a sit-in of over 31 days in order to just get some of things done on their demands. Obviously, yeah, students will lose faith, but one of the things that we'll remind students is that Nottingham SU was able to get a lot of stuff done, a lot of ambitious stuff done. So one of the things that Ryan and I want to do is to continue with that ambitiousness and keep pushing to make sure that all of these ambitious things get done.
So as Justine said, it's understandable that people lost faith in the university, and that includes an association on top of the administration. So something we wanted to push forward is accountability with the administration, but also accountability with student association. So making sure that as candidates, as whoever we are, student association president, vice president is our proper representation of the student body, and also advocating for the current needs and evolving needs of the student body, but also being able to hold the administration accountable with those relationships and also with those meetings that we already have experience in.
All right. Next question. Georgia wants to know from the presidential candidates, what would you say that you have that the other candidates don't? And we're going to go in the order of Justine and Ryan, Morgan and David, Sudhir and Yanan, just presidential candidates this time. But for the rest of the rapid fire questions, we're going to go in that order just for the sake of simplicity and speed. So Justine, you can start us off.
So definitely, like I said earlier, unfortunately, only the SA president sits on the board of trustees. And given that it's the most powerful structuring body on this campus, we need a student who is diverse. I mean, other campaigns have realized the importance of diverse student input, but some of that is not entirely reflected on their ticket. So one of the things that I have is just even my personal identity, because one of the things that moves people into taking action and into supporting policies is being able to speak for it and fight for it from personal experience. And I have plenty of that experience as a low income.
David and my platform is driven by you, and that's what sets us apart. We pull from student voices. We understand that we're not going to be able to represent everybody, but unfortunately, no campaign can represent everybody or every community. That's why we open it up to the students for their concerns and their conversations. That's why we have a campaign team that's made up of all women. That's why David and I have extensive experience, not just in government, but working within our communities to work for the people that make up our community. Our campaign is driven by the people. We are passionate about your passions. Your change is our action. That's what we're here to do, and that's what will get done. Yeah, thank you.
Okay, so I just want to say that Yanan and I, again, are the second pair in history that are two women in color on the same ticket running for SA. And so this representation starts with who you elect into the student body. We embody the POC community and also the POC just the experience because of how the experiences we've had on campus. On top of that, representation includes just like how we communicate with the students and how the experiences that we've had. Additionally, we've also had experience as presidents of our two orgs. I've been the president of Residence Hall Association for the past year, have had those 20-hour commitments, have had the relationship with the administration, have been in all those rooms. Both Hannah and I have developed relationships with the administration, which is crucial to this position.
Our next question is from Michael. In what ways would your administration be different from the current SA administration? Again, we will proceed in the same order as last time.
Definitely to try and include all students and really advocate for the student body. I know that both Mackenzie and Samia stayed over at the Barnes Center during the Not Again SU protests, and I know that they sent out solidarity statements. So I really appreciated their efforts to really align themselves with students fighting for things that are important for them. But one of the things that Ryan and I would love to do is even take that a step further and really try and influence our policy, because that's where students need it the most, an actual structural change. So one of the things Ryan and I were thinking about, for example, Mental Health Awareness Week. It's a really great week and it helps students feel better, but one of the things that we want to do is make it even long-term and lasting by actually enacting policy that'll help students. So for example, we want to fight for 3 mental health excused absences. That's something that's going to last longer than just a week where students talk about these issues, but then actually serves to help those people with mental health problems. And that's just one.
Right. So administrations year to year, they always change, and there's so many things to make sure you're thinking about when you're going into a new election period. And so one of the things that we really recognize is the strength in continuing SA initiatives. So one thing that we want to do is continue expanding the food pantry in the Hendricks Chapel, making sure that some rollover funds are given to them. Another thing that we would like to really improve on in SA internally is transparency. So for example, the SA president and vice president, they have office hours. I'm not sure if people watching this know that, but you can go and see them and talk to them and voice your concerns. Morgan and I, we will be publicizing those so that you can actually talk to us and make sure that your voice is heard. We also want to make sure that we are being clear about the resources that we can give students for not getting SU and other student concerns that have been addressed this year.
One thing Sudhir and I believe that Mackenzie and Samiha did a great job this year in was to be resilient towards administration. A couple of initiatives we want to make sure we implement differently is to advocate for more mental health counselors in and around campus, such as like residence halls and libraries and other buildings. And also our sustainability platform advocates for more biodegradable products to be introduced on campus and for the university to have a monthly energy report so we can track our university sustainability efforts and our energy output.
All right, we're going to have another quick yes or no from each team. Steph wants to know, if you don't win the election, do you still plan on joining SA next year? Same order.
Yes.
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 Yes. Yeah.
All right, I think that was a yes from everybody. We are going to move on to closing statements. Each team is going to have 60 seconds to offer their final thoughts. We'll start with Sadia and Yunan.
Sorry, my mic wasn't turning off. Okay. But so first off, we want to start off with thank you to everyone for coming to this debate and also participating in this and listening to it as well. I want to enforce again that Yunan and I are the second pair of women of color to run on the same ticket for SU Student Association. And this is really important of who you choose to represent, because on this campus, and people who identify as females and women on this campus have always been treated differently. And I think that needs to be known. And choosing us would definitely be a step forward for this campus, especially since we are women of color. Additionally, we want to go the extra mile for you, making sure that we're representative of the student body by communicating with all of you. I don't know if Yunan wants to finish up with anything else.
Right, yeah, and the whole concept of our platform is that we believe every single voice counts and that change never stops. Thank you once again for having us.
All right, we'll go to Justine and Ryan.
Yes, so I want to say thank you again for everyone who's watching. I know we're in difficult and uncertain times right now with this coronavirus pandemic, so I really appreciate the time. Thank you, Daily Orange, CitrusTV, Student Association for setting this up, and for the viewers watching. The one thing I will say about Ryan and I think there are three things that make our campaign very different from the rest. We're the most diverse in terms of gender and race, and you have to think about that when you're thinking about who's going to be representing the entire student body. Second, is that even though I don't have that student association experience, Ryan does, but I actually like that dynamic duo of like one having that student association experience and one of the others not having it, because it provides that fresh perspective that I think student association could use right now. Third, like I said, passion. I think something that comes with strong leadership is being able to take a stance on things. And Ryan and I definitely do not regret our decision to take a strong stance against hate speech. And it seems as of right now, we're the only campaign that's strongly being firm on that and being clear on that.
Yeah.
I just want to thank everyone for.
I'm sorry.
I just want to thank everyone for coming in today and being a part of this debate. And I want to reiterate what Justine said. When it comes to leadership, you have to be strong, you have to be bold, you have to be ready to make tough decisions. And we've made that abundantly clear that we're not going to straddle the fence. We are going to move forward, and we're going to make the right decision, but we're not going to choose to not make one.
Morgan and David.
Yeah, once again, we just want to, as the other campaigns have, thank CitrusTV, Daily Orange, and Student Association for having this debate. David and I also want to extend just a thank you to the other campaigns for running such strong campaigns and being in this race. It's so important that all student voices are heard, and it's incredible to have three really diverse and different teams looking to fill these seats. It goes back to our campaign principle of Driven by You. We're here to listen to students and make bold action. We'll make action in collaboration with students. We'll present our policy-driven platforms to make sure that change truly happens. I think what's something that leaders need is the ability to listen, the ability to collaborate, and the ability to foster an environment that feels like home for their students. And that's what David and I really intend to do. And we look forward for the students to coming out to vote. David, would you like to wrap it up?
Please. I think something I just want to say is the Driven by You campaign is the most diverse, representative campaign on the campus right now for this election season. The Driven by You campaign, again, is about you, Justine, Yanan, Sadia, Brian, Morgan, me, Gabby, every single person on this call, every single person watching this, and every student who isn't. There's no way that being just a leader for the Syracuse University student body is just about being stern and being firm. It's about being personable, being able to connect, and being able to talk to each student and represent them. Please remember that when you vote, and please remember that we are driven by you.
I just have a quick response. I know we're closing right now, but my question is, you're talking about personability and building connections. How are you going to build connections with the students of marginalized groups when you chose not to take a stance on something that threatens their mental health and well-being that you claim to be is the first most important thing on your platform? I'm just curious about how you're going to build that trust and they feel like they could go to you for things that affect them when you're clearly making an example here right now that you just can't. Because I'll tell you personally, I feel like I can't go to you.
Sure. So as a marginalized community member myself, I definitely recognize that we need to be fighting more for that, not as a campaign, but as a university. At the end of the day, we're all together. A lot of my roles are about making sure student voices are heard. For example, I'm a council member here in my hometown. That is what I do. That is not to say that every student on the Syracuse University campus likes me, likes Morgan, likes you, likes Ryan, likes Sadia, likes Nan. It's about being able to still be better than that and be like, okay, we're still students, I'm a leader. Let's make sure I still represent them regardless of what's going on and what's being said.
All right, that concludes tonight's virtual debate. Thank you to all the SA presidential and vice presidential candidates for coming, and thank you to all our viewers for joining us. For more information about the candidates, check out the essay candidate booklet you received via email, or check out the Daily Orange and CitrusTV websites for more coverage.
Voting will begin on Monday, April 13th via MySlice. Go to Student Services, then click Vote Now. Students have until Thursday to cast their virtual ballots. For all of us here, I'm Gabrielle Caracciolo. Thanks for joining us. Have a great night and stay safe, SU.